So in any case, the winter came to a crashing close when he sent her a TV. The son of hers bought a TV and sent her a TV. And then
everything.
Everything changed.
Hello, everyone. This is Mark Peterson with the Frog Outside the Well Research Center. And today I've got my old friend back again, Paul Dredge, PhD in anthropology from Harvard. We did a program a couple of weeks ago, and people liked it, Paul.
I was pleased with it myself, but I'm really glad that folks liked it. We had a lot of comments and a lot of support.
Yeah, I was really pleased. So we thought then that there might be more to talk about. And indeed, we've got a lot of things to talk about. Today, I thought we'd start off with what you're doing. And, you told me a story. You're doing corporate culture. You're doing business training. You're doing things that help people to do their work better. But you told me of an individual case of working with someone who was promoted, transferred in or something, new job, and
new CFO
just ran roughshod over his people.
Company. Yeah, he was not doing well.
And you were hired to train him one-on-one. How would that go?
Well, it's what we call coaching. There's a whole industry.
That's a better word than training or fixing.
No, there are people who do coaching for a living.
Yeah, that's true.
I do more training, a lot more, but I take on a coaching client once in a while, and this guy was interesting. So
you told me that he agreed to have you come in and work with him, and while you were there, he called in a subordinate and dressed her down, just tore her up one side and down the other, and she left. And you told me that you said, well, let's talk about how do you think she felt? And he said something like, it's not my job to tell you how somebody feels. I'm just getting the work done.
Yeah, well, that's a theme of my practice, right? Getting the work done and having good relationships. I took him fishing too. I'm a fisherman, and I think if you're gonna have a solid relationship with a stranger, a good way to jumpstart it is to go fishing together. And
well, even if you're not a stranger, you've taken me fishing too. We've had a great time.
Yes.
The only time I go fishing, Paul, is with you.
Well, I go without you, Mark, but I love it when you come, because you catch big fish and you're really excited when it happens. And this guy had a good time. He made some changes.
So Paul, you're a PhD in anthropology, but it sounds to me like you're a doctor of relationships.
Well, that's how it's evolved. Anthropology is the study of people, and it has a lot of branches. When I was in grad school, I had no idea that I would be doing what I'm doing now, but I think I'm still well within the confines of what anthropology is about.
And it all started, let me flip up the screen here, and here you are in one of your seminars today.
Yeah, we showed this one last time.
But back a few years ago, here's a new picture. We had a black and white last time, but here's the bride and the groom. Of course, you weren't married in the village. It's rather that you were there for a time, and then Nancy came to join you.
Right.
And she brought with her your two little children. She came late because David, number 2 there, had just been born in August and wasn't ready to go over to Korea as a little baby. So the children in the village got to know your children. This is Nambuki, I know. Nambuki is a little buddy friend of yours. In fact, I know that Nambuki lived in the house across the courtyard from you.
That's Nambuki's house right there.
That's an incredible picture, Paul. That's incredible, because you can't find that kind of house anymore. And on top of that, this is the kitchen. Now, this isn't your kitchen. This is Nambuki's mother's kitchen, but you had a kitchen similar to this that you had to rig up.
Just like it, that was put up on the back of a meeting hall that belonged to the lineage, the family. So this is typical of the village kitchens. They were burning the twigs on the right there in that fireplace, and then it heated the floor. You can see the ondel on the left.
Yeah.
But this is
typical kitchen.
Typical kitchen for everybody in the village.
And it's very utilitarian because the fire is so low, you can cook it on the one level, the next level, and then the higher level heats the room next to you. So your house was not a thatched roof house, but was a tiled roof house, right? That was used for meetings, but they gave it to you during the time you were there.
Yeah, it wasn't a house. It was a meeting hall, and it had an ondo floor on each end and a maru bang in the middle, and a nice veranda porch that went across the entire front. Beautiful wood and old smooth stuff from people sitting on it for 100 years or so. And then they put up a kitchen in the back temporarily, and after we left the house, they broke it down and hauled it away.
So the house was used as a meeting house, you say, but was it also the sadang? Was it the school? The village?
Sadang, yeah.
Really?
When I first got there with my research assistant, we had one room and the sadang was still meeting in the other room. And we could hear the boys chanting. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
We want to talk today about change, social change. You were in a village with a lot of thatched roof homes still that hadn't taken the thatch off, but this picture is just incredible.
This was kind of a joke picture, right? I mean, I guess this ox isn't getting a full tank from the gas station, but it just captured the old and the new in one place, right?
Yeah. Well, and tell us about this picture. I didn't see this when I first looked at it, but when you told me about it, it made sense. Tell me about this.
So on the left, we have rice plants from a strain called Ilban Pyo, which is just traditional good Korean short grain glutinous rice. And on the right is Mirang Pyo, which is the new crop or new variety that was being mandated by the government during the Semao Undong, the new community movement.
High yield.
Well, look at the heads of the rice. You know, you've got like 3 times as much grain on the mirang as you do on the other.
Wow. So all kinds of social change, but in the social change, some things are lost, some things are gained. What's going on here?
Well, this is a father and his son having a good game of padu. In the village, the farming is very demanding when it's demanding. You know, it's time to plant, it's time to harvest. But in some parts of the year, there's not that much to do. There was quite a bit of leisure. People were able to play games and sit around and talk to each other. And it was, I would say, demanding, but not high stress situation for most people. You know, if the crop was bad, then it was bad. But
you like this picture because it reminds you that the children were all over the place.
Yeah, we had kids everywhere, and they just ran pretty well free in the village and did whatever they wanted. There was nothing dangerous there. They played and they had a great time. No traffic. There were no cars, and the roads weren't even big enough for cars anyway. So they were happy. They just seemed like always having a good time.
And there's an aesthetic that you talk about. Maybe we've lost, maybe we haven't. You like this gate to the shrine.
Yeah, to me, that's really beautiful traditional Korean architecture. It captures the flavor of the place. And, you know, I think these days, probably a lot of things, most of the things people build in Korea don't look like this at all. But I've noticed that people are very enamored of kiwachip and the old traditional style housing. And, you know, behind the tile roofs and the sliding doors, there are modern kitchens and bathrooms and all the comforts of modern life. But there's a whole village of tile roofed houses built not too far from where I did my field work now. And
Yeah, the new Hanok.
Yeah, they're beautiful places.
And this is a typical photo from the old days. This is one of your scholar gentlemen in the village, and that's his desk and his inkstone and his brushes. And
it's a little bit staged, right? We had a book open and I took a picture, and but this is what somebody had who was writing things that are on this screen that we talked about last time.
On your screen behind you there, yeah. In the old days, I referred to this as the balepang. One of my commentators said that's the baleto. You actually said baleto, and I wrote it.
I did, yeah. I knew the right word. That's one of the few things that I got you on with Korean, because mine is very rusty and yours is great.
But here you say this was a vital part of culture because this is where all the news was spread.
This is the news of Santa. Everybody's finding out what's going on while they're washing the clothes.
And you went back, you've been back several times to the village. You went back one time and you took this picture.
That was
the Baleto in absolute desolation. Totally
nobody there. And you wonder, okay, how do people get the news now? Where do they go? And do they have the same kind of close relationships with the neighborhood and the neighbors? I don't know. I mean, I don't get the impression that they're isolated or not having any fun, but you know, so many of their empty houses now. And a lot of the people who are still in the village are old, or they are farmer entrepreneurs who have been able to consolidate land holdings and do cash cropping and really become quite prosperous. They're doing very well. But,
you know, I've taken student groups over to live in Korean villages, I think 7 times. And it's because the houses are empty. They're empty houses. You can, although when I checked on one of them, the houses that had been quite a number empty and unused are now filling up because there's a return to the village psychology among urbanites who retire and go back to the village.
People are wanting to get back to that kind of close relationship to people and not feel isolated in apartment towers.
Yeah. Here is a picture of a bunch of young boys. Here's a bunch of young girls. The thing we want to talk about here, here's a group of, you see the baby there, and you might think this is a young marriage, but these are single women. The woman's taking care of a young sibling or a nephew or something.
In my village, they call them kunegis. Kunegi. The big babies, those are unmarried young women.
Big babies. And then here are older women hanging out. They're not down at the paleto, but they're hanging out and talking together.
A couple of them are the same ones who were at the paleto, actually.
You know them all.
Yeah, sure.
And here are some old men hanging out at the pavilion. Now, we don't have a picture, but I want to talk a bit about what you said about the age set. These are age sets, groups of people, usually divided by gender. We've got the idea of
gender and age. So you have the kids, they just play in the roads and in the neighborhood, and they have a good time. But once you get to be a young woman, those young women would gather at the home of someone who had maybe a little extra space in the evening, and they called it hakyo. Ono hakyo kanya. Which hakyo you're going to go to tonight? And
You mentioned that. That's funny to refer to these age set groups as hot.
It was kind of it was a play on words. It's kind of, you know, fun. It's joke, but everybody had a place to go. Everybody in the village had a place to go after dinner at night to sit around and chat and visit and maybe play some games, some cards.
And you fit in with a group of young men who were your age, who were unmarried, but you hung out with them because your wife hadn't joined you in the
That's
village.
right. I was living a Horebi Senghua, which is a terrible fate for a man, you know, to be without a woman to take care of him. That's people would Kayop Sura, Sulpuhan, Horebi.
Tell me, you told me about this. I want you to tell the my audience about this, that you hung out with this group of young men and you'd play cards and talk and such. And
we just had a great time all winter long. It was great. Every night I'd eat dinner, and Gunno came too, my assistant. And so we had, he was the same age as these other guys.
He was unmarried at that point.
That's right. He was a single man, and so we all went. It's interesting. We met at the home of a widow who had grown up in the village, married out, and then when her husband died, she married back because she had some land, or she came back, and her son was in the merchant marine, and he would send some money home to help her out, although she seemed to be fairly prosperous. She had some land and she let it out for sharecropping. So in any case, the winter came to a crashing close when he sent her a TV. The son of hers bought a TV and sent her a TV. And then everything changed. Our little band of brothers to compete now with the TV, and the whole village was in. Was it maybe a 9 by 9 foot room? Had a TV on one side now and 25 people in there. How did they all get in? I don't know. It was like, I tried it a couple times, and of course for me, you know, I was learning about Korea and joking and playing cards and having conversation in that room. And now it was the TV blaring out and everybody just staring there looking at it. It ruined everything. I hated it. I was very unhappy.
Well,
and I wonder, you know, what happened to the Hakkyo, right? I think the people who had conversations and maybe told riddles. There were susukeki, and there were tales about the old days and what happened to grandpa and all kinds of stuff that was good for an anthropologist. Now it was TV, and people progressively then got TVs over time. And the whole order of things changed.
Wow. One of the things that you generated from your study was this flow chart. And this was generated because you were interested in language and Korean language levels.
Right.
You told last time of how someone spoke to you in Panmal in an appropriate way, and you felt intimate and close and respectful to the person, the older person that had spoken to you this way. And you wanted to understand that. So you created this flow chart of all the dynamics come into what you speak. And bottom line is that you have a flow chart of how you speak to different people, but the bottom line is relationships.
That's right. Yeah, I guess this chart is, you might call it a summary of a 290-page dissertation, because it lays out a decision path of how you make a decision of what level of speech to use. But yeah, it's basically the levels of speech in Korean talk about who is related to who and how.
Now, let's talk about, you mentioned before to me that in a village that's been around in a family lineage organization that's been around for several hundred
Right.
years,
Yeah.
you sometimes have a great-grandfather who's 10 years old and a great-great-grandson who's 80 years old.
That's right. Yeah.
And so the old man speaks to his great-great-grandfather who's 10 years old in respectful terms.
Exactly. Very, very polite level.
And the little boy speaks down to his old man.
Evidently, I asked about that. They said before Yu-Gi-Oh, before the war, the Korean War, that's what we insisted on. The generation was prime, and age had nothing to do with it. But we've modified that. So now the young boy speaks politely to the old man, and the old man speaks politely to the young man. Now, old man speaking Hasho to a 10-year-old is really weird. That's not what usually happens in Korean, but because of the family relationship, they're part of the same lineage and family. That's how they had to do it.
So
And
this
it was-
got your head thinking about relationships. And that's what you do for a living now. And I want to, we can't talk too much longer on this, but I want to jump ahead just a little bit. This is you 4 years later, 5 years later.
Yeah, it's 4 years, I think. Yeah,
You've been back to the village.
a little less than 4.
You've been back to the village several times.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this picture too. This picture is your wife and your 2 children.
Yeah.
With your mother and your wife's mother.
Yes. Can you guess who's my mom and who's her mom? I think you can, right?
Yeah. So, but the thing that I pick out of this picture is child number 3.
Yeah. There's a reason why that sweater is not buttoned up.
Is because of child number 3. And you went home, and a month later, child number 3 was born. And the thing that's interesting is child number 3 is named Margaret, and she is now your partner and has followed in your footsteps on developing all these teaching methods about business and relationships and how people should treat each other.
That's right. Yeah, she's a great partner. We said that before. And she is I guess we'd say, a product of the village where I did my field work, right?
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, this is fantastic. I know Margaret a little bit too, of course, and she's a very, very smart young woman. And, we ought to do another video with her. And now she's been back to the village only once.
Just once. You say she's very smart. I'm glad you said that. I can't say that because, of a parent. I've learned enough about Korean culture that you just have to say, monnan chashi and all that stuff. Or maybe you don't. I can't brag about her, but you can brag. That's fine. She and I were there just when COVID hit Korea.
Oh, just 2 years ago then.
January of 2020.
Wow, 2 years ago. Well,
we did a workshop.
And she was quite impressed with the place.
She loved Korea, and she particularly loved the village where we had a great experience. So maybe we can talk about that if
let's
seems
save
like a
that
good
for
thing.
next time. This has really been fascinating, Paul. And let's look forward to interviewing Margaret next time and see how she fits into this Korean picture that we're looking at.
Fair enough. I think we want to say that Korea has changed, and some things have been lost and some things have been gained, and some things have been kept.
And Margaret can talk about all 3 of those.
Yeah, I think she really appreciated the things that have been kept.
Yeah, and the way she was treated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's marvelous. Okay, that's next time. Hey, thanks, Paul. It's been good talking to you again.
Likewise, Mark. Be well.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.